All right, everyone. We are back for another amazing podcast. My podcast is all about real people with real stories. I started off doing intermittent fasting, how intermittent fasting affects people's health. Most people don't get to talk to, or most gurus don't talk to the average person, but Steph does. Instead of talking to the PhDs, why don't we just talk to the real people with real stories? But today, it's not about intermittent fasting. Might include some of that. We've got Scott here, and Scott is going to tell his story, his health story. So instead of, trying to give you a bunch of lead-ins, I'm just going to let you guys listen to his story because I find it so freaking fascinating. So go ahead. And Scott, why don't you just introduce yourself and then go for it?
Well, I think you're probably the only person who finds me fascinating. Most people can't stand listening to me. By the way, I'm going to plug my podcast, The Carnivore Lion. Check it out on YouTube, guys.
You can plug it 5,000 times. I don't care.
So Stephanie, I contacted Stephanie for good reason because my health sucks. Stephanie, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, my health sucks. I've been pretty sick for the last about 5.5 years now. I've had some good conversations with Stephanie about, stuff just outside of the health realm, but sort of living in this matrix and this goo-like pod that I was living in for so long, and placing trust in my doctors and taking medications and stuff, which I really shouldn't have been taking.
But tell us what happened. Let's get to it.
Yeah. So about 5.5 years ago, I was going through a very stressful time in my life, and I started developing some pain condition. I developed chronic pelvic pain syndrome, and I was starting getting acid reflux. So they put me on a benzodiazepine. It was lorazepam, and I got off that, and I started getting all sorts of weird symptoms. I started getting really sick from withdrawals. They also put me on an antibiotic. All hell broke loose. I started getting vision problems, severe anxiety, rashes, just all sorts of like terrible brain fog, like I was living in a different world kind of thing. Had that for about 1.5 years. My doctor, who's just, Einstein, put me on an SNRI, which is Cymbalta. So it's a type of antidepressant to help deal with the withdrawals of the benzodiazepine. And that obviously worked out well for me. So I started trying to taper that. And then really, that's when shit really kind of hit the fan for me and things got really bad. Since then, I got the stomach flu in December 2019. My acid reflux came back tenfold. I started having acid reflux 24/7, got diagnosed with SIBO, leaky gut, gastritis, and some other things. I was starting to recover a little bit, but then I got food poisoning in last summer. I got food poisoning from eating some raw beef, and then my gastritis flared up like crazy. I started getting really sick again, and I've been really, really sick, pretty much like bedbound for a lot of that time over the last year or so. As you guys could see, I'm not. If you believe it or not, I actually used to be a bodybuilder. I actually have a fitness business. I used to weigh, at my peak, I was about 60 something pounds heavier than I am now. So I've lost a ton of weight. And basically what I did to help heal my issues is I went on the carnivore diet, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was eating like a pound of beef a day, or a pound of beef per meal. I was doing intermittent fasting, which like absolutely like just destroyed my hormones and tanked my digestion. And I was getting all sorts of histamine type reactions and just terrible reactions to all this stuff. That's when I started coaching with Stephanie. So Stephanie sort of set me on the straight. She goes, "You need to cut back on your protein a little bit. You need to work on meal timing better. Cut out the crap of the intermittent fasting. Try to work your way up with fats. and that's the plan right now. So there was so basically what happened was like a couple months ago, my digestion started tanking again, and I went on something called the elemental diet, which is just like pre-digested kind of liquid formulation that people use for SIBO and gastritis. And I was doing that with one meal a day. And it really did help with my acid reflux, but everything else was getting worse. And I started, eating more vegetables again. My daughter loves kale chips. So I had a pretty good laugh about stuff with Stephanie about this, but so I was making like kale chips in the air fryer every day. I've been eating them every day now for like 2 months, and like a bowl of kale chips like every single day, kind of thing. And not
No.
not doing so well with that. So I'm going to cut that out. I didn't even think about the goitrogens in that. So and I think my thyroid issues have been like sort of acting up a little bit. So um, so the plan is, I think I was talking about with Stephanie. Stephanie, I don't know if you want me to go through this or if you want to go through this together. But basically, I've been going from like one meal a day with the elemental shakes, and we sort of discussed that like I need to wean off these elemental shakes and start eating again to start increasing my acid production again, because I'm not handling foods well at all.
If you mind,
And
cut in for a second.
sure.
There's a little.
I know I'm all over the place, by the way. My story is like so convoluted it makes my head spin. But yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to cut in so the audience really understood how serious your situation is. Scott was sitting at 5'10" at a
5.
his max weight was 185 pounds. He owns a fitness business. And so if you guys see him now that he's underweight, it's like this isn't his baseline. This is not. People need to understand the seriousness of a leaking gut, damage to the gut wall, damage to the mucus, to the stomach, to the intestine.
Yeah.
And people don't, there are a lot of, and I have a lot of friends and clients and people that I've worked with over the years that have gone through crazy things that the doctors can't explain. You can't explain. You go to the doctor and they want to shove pills down your throat. They're looking at you probably thinking that you are just an underweight person wanting to give you some type of pharmaceuticals. Like you said with the cholesterol panel, he even asked me prior to us going live, because we actually just finished a consultation. And so I asked him if we can go live and talk about his situation. And, here he is worried about his cholesterol panel because his total cholesterol was higher than what the status quo tells you to have. And I said, no, we can break down. I broke down cholesterol for him to help him understand. There's also the problem with the kale chips. There's also the problem that back in the day, you were running a fitness business and you started to have, what did you say? I wrote it down. The beginning story of your issues started with what initially was the first thing that started to go?
Well, it was like,
oh, you had pain. Wait, you had
chronic pelvic pain syndrome.
Chronic pain syndrome. That's what I wanted to touch on. You had a sort of a pain that's very, very uncommon. So this is something I've never heard of. I've heard of people having fibromyalgia.
Well, yeah, I'll say it's actually not uncommon. It's extremely common. The problem is, so in the medical world, they call it prostatitis. That's what it's mostly known as. Prostatitis is very common. It's just that I call it chronic pelvic pain syndrome because I know that it has nothing to do with your prostate.
Right.
But 99.9% of people think it does. They think that the problem is the prostate, but it has nothing to do with your prostate. It's basically just, from my understanding of it, sorry, there's a fly all over the place here. From my understanding of it, it's just mast cell activation, and that's where where the pain is coming from. Like I probably had SIBO or Candida overgrowth, which is like there are a lot of studies linked with this. And then you get the mast cell activation, and then that's when these sort of pain conditions could develop in some people, right?
Can you push
So
it through, because you develop mast cell activation and
yeah.
small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? Can you talk about your different ailments more specifically? Because people may not understand how you went from this high weight to this very low weight. What is it that made you feel like you couldn't eat? Can you talk about some of those things?
Hmm. Well, because I would have reactions every time I ate.
Like what?
Well, like so, it sort of started off like when I got off the benzos. I started dropping weight, and I wasn't eating as much as I used to. Like I couldn't tolerate any carbs, for instance. Like I can't tolerate carbs. I can't tolerate sugars. So um,
Was it just
I
manifesting it in the pelvic pain, or were you having other things? Because when people think of mast cell activation, they're thinking like dripping nose, itchy eyes, headache. Because you said you were suffering from brain fog.
oh yeah, no, it was brain fog, anxiety. It was all sorts of things. I was very much the keto diet has been very new to me. It's only been in the last 5 years, and I was so stupid that I didn't realize that I should have been upping my fats. So my energies was always very low until I started increasing my fat. But for a few years there, I was just eating a lot of protein. I was like trying to be mindful in terms of getting fat because I knew my carbs were low, but I really had no idea. I was like, oh, I'll just add a little bit of fat here and there. I'll be okay, kind of thing. And I never made that connection in my brain that that's the reason why my energy was so terrible. Um, but I just kept losing weight. And then in 2020, when first found out I got SIBO and I had the acid reflux all the time, I was like, I need to go on like certain diets to see um, what would help in terms of like getting rid of my acid reflux. So that's when I started like fasting a lot. Um, I was doing different points. I was doing like the elemental diet or versions of that. So a lot of like liquid type fasting, um, like just doing like meat stock fasting, like that kind of stuff. And the weight was just like pouring off of me, kind of thing. So I think it was partially because I have really bad SIBO and I have like malabsorption issues. And also, I think it's a combination of that and doing all these types of diets that involve different types of fasting. It wasn't so much like just not taking anything. It's just that it'd be like meat stock fasting or liquid fasting or, different types of liquids and stuff, like MCT oil and stuff like that. Right. So, um,
Problem with that is that you're not using all the digestive equipment now because now you're drinking your food.
yeah,
So even though you
right.
got instant relief, now
Yeah.
there's going to be a rebound effect because now your stomach acids are dropping even lower, which you start to develop the horrible acid reflux.
Yeah. Well,
In general,
in all honesty, like the elemental diet helped my reflux a lot. After I got the stomach flu in 2020 and the food poisoning, the only thing that helped was the elemental diet. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was telling Stephanie that I went to a friend's place and we had pork belly and ghee for dinner, and I had a crap ton of it. He just kept feeding me all this pork belly. And I thought at the time, I was like, I'll probably pay for this. But I woke up the next day and my stomach was it was like a world of pain. I had the worst acid reflux after it had been gone, almost completely gone for 2 months. So then I hopped back on the elemental diet.
but
Um,
Scott, do you see what I'm saying? That's the reason why I don't like the elemental diet, because it didn't fix you. It just
yeah.
manages the symptoms.
Yeah. It takes away the symptoms. And then, yeah, it never fixes me for sure. It doesn't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But I think partially part of the problem is I don't know, like, what's the word, I don't digest fats properly because I have SIBO, and I have really bad gastritis, and I don't do well with like high fat. So if I do eat something like what most normal people, like my friend's place, he had just as much food as I did. He was fine the next day, you know. But for someone like me with these issues, like I can't eat a shit ton of pork belly and that type of stuff.
But you also have
And
gallbladder issues. It's not just the low stomach acid. It is also the gallbladder. Oh, there's all
yeah,
these moving parts.
yeah. Well, yeah, it seems to me like it's pretty common, like that pattern. You'll see people with SIBO, they just like their gallbladders just don't function properly. I think like you just don't produce the same bile salts when you have this like excess bacteria. I don't know exactly how it works, but it seems like that's a pretty common occurrence. Um, so that's always been a huge problem of mine is like if I eat too much fat, I'll start developing that pain. So I'll see like right below my rib cage there on the right side,
Mhm.
and I'll get like burning, gnawing pain in my stomach, and I'll feel like super nauseous. And for me, it's like with fats, like I can tolerate fat okay, but I really have to work my way up slowly. Like I can't just go from 0 to 100. Like if I have to like work on that over the course of like months even, where I keep increasing the fat a little bit here, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So your situation was that how long ago was this again? 2019?
When all hell broke loose?
Yeah.
No, it was February 2017. It was right. I think it was Valentine's Day 2017. Yeah.
Okay, so 2017, and you start to develop this pelvic pain. And of course, they're misdiagnosing you, thinking it's something with your prostate. So that already gets you in a really confused place. Um, you ended up finding the elemental diet to deal with the digestive issues, the discomfort, the pain on the right side. The pain went down itself, right? You went carnivore, but you're having problems still with enough energy because you're not able to eat enough fat because you're having issues breaking down the fat. And then you've got histamine on top of that. So there's all these.
Yeah. And another thing I've never been able to figure out, Stephanie, is the electrolyte issues. I don't understand it. I don't know if it's because I'm maybe like I've been trying to cut back on my salt, but um, I think I did notice my cramps getting better when I was going higher fat, but I can't say for sure. But I've always had carnivore. I've been carnivore for over a year now, mostly, minus like my binge with the kale chips in recent days and all that stuff. But I've been mostly carnivore. And the second I went carnivore, like literally the day of, I started developing those cramps in my calves. Like I'm walking and it feels like my legs are full of lead. Um,
I
I
think
can't figure it out. Like I've taken magnesium. Like I can't figure it out.
in my opinion, this gut wall, this gut lining, was a very slow obliteration and destroying of your microvilli and creating gaps within your small intestinal wall.
Oh,
And
100. Yeah.
it just there was like one drop over the glass, and all of a sudden you start to develop all of the pain, the histamine pain.
Mhm.
And the problem is that you also probably were not absorbing your nutrition, your vitamins, your minerals. The mineral part of your electrolytes is where you're sitting at, which is why you've had kidney pain, which is why you're looking at your bun test and seeing how if you're having any protein byproducts ending up in the kidney, which looks like that it is. You're having chronic dehydration, so you have to drink enough water, you have to eat enough salt, but you can't have too much salt and you can have too much water. It's that whole Goldilocks effect of not too much, but then not too little. We have to find the sweet spots for your sodium and your water intake. Now, what were you doing for your potassium?
I've taken potassium citrate supplements on and off at various points, but I never found them to be helpful.
Well, the problem is that you have a leaking gut. So you may not feel the benefits of taking these types of supplements now, unfortunately, because you can't eat avocado. And that would be great if you could, but you cannot. And that leaves us with potassium citrate, which is a more gentle type of potassium on your kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not gonna. The problem with people is that so quickly they feel that things don't work. I find this all the time. I'm like, nope, nope. If you have a leaking gut, you're not absorbing these things, so you don't feel the effects of them. But your body is absorbing a little bit, and over time, that gut wall will slowly start to seal up. And if you just go off and on and are not consistent, you're not building up any tolerance or any type of ability to absorb. So you have to be consistent on your magnesium, on your potassium, on your sodium and water amounts every single day. And then you will start to notice those cramps or the kidney pain or any issues, tired, lack of focus can also, your brain fog could come from you're being chronically dehydrated without knowing it, because you have so many things going on. You may not even notice that you are dehydrated.
Yeah. And I want to pick your brain on that too. So, I mean, in terms of the levels of water that you intake in a day and salt, I mean, first off, do you recommend salting foods?
Of course.
Salting them? Okay.
You have to. And the thing is that this whole people follow this agenus, what is it, Vanderplan? What was this? I can't remember.
Well, but what's like the idea behind that, like in terms of from like an ancestral approach?
Well, we would do a lot of things. Like we would drink the blood. We would,
right.
Yeah. I mean, today, the modern human is so toxic. I don't think anybody has a solid gut wall. I think everybody's gut wall, everyone's gut wall has been compromised to some varying degree. And so our ability to absorb minerals is compromised. We cannot use, and that's why I don't like to talk about, like, if people are like, our ancestors fasted. I'm like, they also didn't have bills, okay? They didn't drive cars and then watch TV. They didn't have stress. And they didn't have Shirota Bona and stupid, crazy things going on in the world today. They didn't have that.
Like, they also had a healthy gut microbiome.
They had a I mean, I'm so jealous of I wish my gut had that. I really wish it did. I don't anymore. It's gone. I can get close, but I cannot get it back to the way they're there. So these people died of, like, if you have a cut and you have sepsis, or you have bacteria that's starting to grow, and you die of blood poisoning. They died from inflammation. They died from the elements. They could die from birth, or if it's cold and you have a baby and there's no food. Starvation, but they didn't die from the disease that we are dying from today. They didn't have compromised gut walls. We do this to ourselves.
Yeah, with all that, especially with all the stress and antibiotics and lifestyle foods that we're eating,
pesticides and heavy metals in the air and all kind of things that we are exposed to with toxins that we wouldn't even think about it. Like, the clothing, the dye on the color in your clothing is chemicals. So if you have a very, I don't know if you've been tested for the double or single gene mutation of the MTHFR.
No.
It's something you might want to think about. Now, some people, they say it's about 40% of the world's population, but not everybody. They can methylate, which is like a cellular cleanup and respiration of the cell, like Dr. Seafried was talking about. In fact, Scott is the person that had me on his podcast. So you should definitely go to his channel and check out his work, and Natasha McBride, and her thoughts and comments on, and we'll get to that, about keeping foods in, histamine foods, and not just completely cutting them out and just doing strict carnivore, because you could have a rebound effect. But I digress. The thing that I'm saying is, like let's say with cancer, we don't, just because somebody in your family had cancer and their parents had cancer and they're probably, it's probably 2 generations back, 3 maybe, of cancer or heart disease. This comes from what you do to your genes rather than the genes themselves. We might all have the same propensity to have illness. Like I know that a lot of Filipinos have heart attacks and strokes. They cannot deal with the modern food. Native Americans cannot tolerate starches and carbs and alcohol and things of this nature. Is that a genetic proponent? Of course. But if they didn't eat these foods, they wouldn't have those health issues. So that's why I'm saying, um, what you've done this to yourself. I don't think it came from anything, but just being completely exposed as a modern human. So if you try to fast the way they fasted, which you've done to try to alleviate your pain, you might have temporary relief from that. But ultimately, they had the strong guts. You don't have the strong gut. Your lifestyle right now, you have some challenges in your lifestyle and beyond your health that these people never had. So it's always kind of like what we've done to our bodies as a modern human rather than born with, like, okay, let's say if you have the MTHFR gene mutation, you could absolutely have cellular cleanup, even though it's more difficult to methylate, right? And have cellular respiration. It's very difficult, but it is still achievable, but you just got to work that much harder than somebody else who does not have this gene mutation. And so that's something you might want to get tested for. You might have a problem with B12 and methylfolate and things of this nature. But even if you were MTHFR, you would still be just fine if you could make the corrections in your lifestyle. And of course, we touched on the idea of, Scott's been through this since 2017. I couldn't remember the year, but this is 5 years, almost 6 years of this nonsense. And to be at 185, and now he's close to my weight. He's 5'10", I'm 5'3". And it's devastating to your psyche and your motivation, and you're going through severe brain fog on top of that. And and there's so much conflicting information out there. It's very confusing. Now, luckily, somewhere in you found some strength and belief in what I'm saying. But it's confusing out there to people on how to fix themselves. But what I want to say to you, and I've said to you many times today and I think yesterday, you have to know that you're going to get better. You cannot feel like you're slowly dying because you're 50 pounds lighter than than what you should be or where you started from.
I think it's that, and also the constant inflammation and everything, and it just feels like that. I mean, that's what I tell myself a lot of days, right? Like I'm just like, it's getting close, to the end kind of thing.
Not at all. The human body is so amazing. The survival of the human body, but we're so protected in today's society. Every little thing that becomes challenging becomes hyper challenging. And our mind doesn't, you've already got brain fog. You're not absorbing minerals. You're having histamine responses and heart palps and brain fog and forgetfulness and emotional and depression and all this kind of stuff. It's very hard to see through the minutia that we're still mammals. And like in our consultation, I said, you need to go, you need to get up when the sun comes up. I said, because we spoke last night, I said, we both need to go to bed earlier. And you need to get up and go put your feet in the dirt and ground next to, because we are mammals. It's very interesting to, use my horse as an example, that he was in California and he had shelter and he does sunburn quite easily, which completely sucks. But, one of the places where I started to see a lot of burning of his skin, his fur was falling out, was a place that didn't have enough trees. And I was just freaking out. I was like putting sunscreen on him. I was putting neck covers on him. I was putting like this turtleneck and it's 100 degrees outside. But they're so resilient. You're like, it'll storm here on a level that freaks me out. And I'm like, they're just standing in these 50-mile-an-hour winds with all the rain. Like, they're going to be fine. And you're going to be fine. We're mammals. The thing is that my horse connected to nature again. He's a horse now. Before, he was in a 12-by-12 box. Somebody brought food and threw it in the trough and walked away. Mm-hmm. And that breaks the spirit of an animal to exist not next to nature whatsoever. I have this complete obsession that he's free. He's free. I just want him to be free. And it's the same thing with humans. You have to think, I need to be free. Mm-hmm. You think you're free, not free. Money is not giving you freedom. And not even health. It's every single moment of your life where you're pondering on something, you have to change the way you think, which will change the way the chemical reactions respond in your body. Like I said to you before, you sound pedantic, a little sardonic. When I talk to him, I talk to Scott on Telegram, I try to pull out the silly side, and he has a silly side. He does. He really has a really silly side, which I love. But when you talk about the side of your health, I feel like a dark cloud just came over our conversation.
Yeah, it is. You're right. And look, I think a big part of that is, I have two small kids, right? And there's many days I've told this story recently in my podcast. I was at the park one day and I was so sick and so decrepit and I just felt so broken down. Like I was trying to push my daughter in the swing and I couldn't do it anymore. Like I just couldn't. I was like, I can't. And my daughter started crying because she's like, Daddy, push me on the swing kind of thing. And I just broke down. I was here I am, a grown man, 40 something years old. And literally just started like tearing up at the park because I can't push my daughter in the swing. And she's crying. People are looking at us. And I just sat there and I was just like, the only thing I could feel was pathetic. That's the only thing I felt. I was like, I'm pathetic.
So what should you have thought instead of in that moment?
I should have thought to myself, that that I'm strong for having gone through all this.
Exactly.
And not only that, but like, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to spring up to the top, right? One thing that you really, that always stuck with me from my first session with you, this was maybe over a year ago now, was that you need to start talking as if something's already happened. I remember you saying that to me. I was like, well, that sounds kind of just like banal advice, like that, it just sounds like something your psychiatrist would say or something, right? But I thought to myself, I was like, I started having these like conversations in my head, right? And I stopped doing it. But I did it for like maybe a few days after, and then it wore off, and I stopped doing it for some stupid reason. I should have kept doing it, but I'd have these conversations in my head as if stuff had already happened. Like I'd be like, "Oh wow, I feel so amazing," and I'd be saying that to myself when I felt like shit, or I'd be like, "Oh, I've had like a week in a row where I feel great," and just say things like this, and just hoping that it would sort of like manifest automatically, but. Now that I think about it, I mean, it takes time for that stuff to manifest, right? Like if you tell yourself you're ugly every day for 6 months or a year or 2 years, obviously you're going to think you're ugly, right? And it's the same way with your health. I mean, it's the same way with everything. That stuff seeps into your brain. Right?
It really, really, really does. And it's like, you're only going to be Scott once.
Yeah.
And you have to make the most out of it. Even if you have to fake it until you make it, you could feel like garbage and be like, no, I feel great. And you're like laughing like this is so stupid. But the reality is that what you say out in the air really influences the way your brain works, right? The neocortex, the identity of who you are right there, the way a synapse is. We have these thoughts like, there's this concept that we live in the past, right? We're like every emotion that we ever have experienced was cultivated from the past. That's why I love the fact that I just up and left California and I went to Texas and I had an awful experience because I'd never had those experiences before.
Mm-hmm.
That creates new building blocks in my mind to Rubik's Cube and figuring out solutions to problems in which I would never have to deal with in the past. When you keep having the same lifestyle, but that's not reality. That's very subjective, right? That's dream world. Every day that you exist, something is different. It's not exactly the same as yesterday, yet we live in the past. Every emotion is from the past, but we're living in a future trajectory. It doesn't make any sense. We don't know what's going to happen. The gas prices went exponentially high. It wasn't like that before. Well, what do I do now? People have got kids. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to still spend money like you used to spend money? Or are you going to be more wise? Maybe trials and tribulations are what makes us human again and puts us back into the mammal. I'm telling you to go stand outside because I know you're not doing it. You know what I'm saying? I know that you'll have these negative thoughts and you're comfortable with them. As a man, innately, you should want to survive, right? Darwin's theory of natural selection. It doesn't matter how far you go down, you have to survive as a human being. But we're so sheltered that now that you're going through this, of course, it's horrible, it's atrocious what you've experienced, but you have so many things. Like even the strategy we came up with today is something new. And just that, like one thought, then you can do that. Everything's going to project yourself into the future thought and the future brain, right? Because you don't want to think past thoughts. Past thoughts didn't get you anywhere. It's future thoughts. It's like, you know, let's say if you got to a car accident, you couldn't run anymore. Now you couldn't run with your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have to do to compensate for that? You have to come up with something different. I fell as a professional skateboarder. I was the most athletic girl that I'd ever met. And then all of a sudden, I can't even walk without excruciating pain. So my identity was wrapped up in this idea of being this pro skater. You know, and it's like, had I never broke my knee, then I would be down. I am in the history books because that's a whole nother thing of getting into the Smithsonian Institute, but that's a whole nother thing I'm going to talk about. But prior to that event, you know, you it's like, I can't skateboard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what?
Yeah.
Reinvent yourself in another way. That's what keeps the mind in a forward trajectory. Stop living in the past.
Yeah. And I always say, you know, like it's if I could take it back in a way. So like I said at the beginning of the podcast, you know, 5 years ago, I was living in the Matrix. I had my pot of goo. I had no idea what was going on in the world, which 99.9% of people don't. They just live their day. Their government tells them what to believe.
You got to be careful with that.
I know. I'm not going to get it. I know you have to be, and that which even proves that we are living in the Matrix because we have to be careful about what we say. But you know,
can work around it. I do all the time. I just come up with goofy words.
Yeah. So, but you know, I mean, people have faith in the system. They have faith in what their government tells them. They have faith in what their doctors tell them. They have faith in what everybody tells their teachers and so on and so forth. Right. And when
He's
you
married to a doctor, so he knows, but I digress. Go ahead.
Well, and I've come to the conclusion that, you know, even with all my health issues, I would rather know the truth and live in hell, albeit temporarily. I'm hoping.
No hoping.
Right. I am.
That's true.
I would rather be in hell and know the truth than live in heaven and just be oblivious to the truth.
Yeah.
And just not know anything, you know, because I feel like this has been an awakening for me. And that's what that's why I love so much about that movie, The Matrix, is that's what that's all about, right? It's not about, and there's even that conflict in the movie of the guy who wanted to destroy the Matrix because he just wanted to go back to living blissfully.
That's
and
right.
He didn't want it, right? But I think that you derive so much more purpose in your life from the truth than you do from just being happy. Happy doesn't. There's no purpose that's derived in someone's life just from happiness.
No.
Right.
It's a subjective term. Even you have happy moments.
Yeah.
You have endorphins. You have serotonin bumps. You have oxytocin bumps. These are the things that make you feel good in the moments. But we're still living in a world where we're surviving as mammals.
Mm-hmm.
People
exactly.
If you forget that, things that are important are not important. We create it all in our head. Everything we think is so important that is beyond survival of yourself or your children is completely made up, like every single thing. Which is why I stopped watching other gurus, because I felt that it was convoluting my thoughts. And I would think things that if I didn't know the information, I couldn't come up with that thought.
Right.
If I never heard it, then I wouldn't think about it. So,
yeah.
So when it comes to, how you live your life, why don't you put yourself in a realm where I'm just in a labyrinth, I'm just in a puzzle, and I've got to figure my health out, and I will. I mean, you're not 80 for frack's sake. Like, stop with this if or I hope nonsense.
Yeah.
That will get you nowhere. It is, I will fix it. And I've said before, it can take a month, it could take a year, or it could take 20 years. I don't give a crap. Just work each day for that goal of survival. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I've taken on this sort of, I've tried to take on this sort of like, day-to-day mentality or even hour to hour, and I find that I cope much better that way. But, this is something I really need to work on. Maybe this could be an entire different conversation in terms of just manifesting conscious manifestations, right? I think that I know you've talked a lot about it in your podcast. I've never talked about it on mine, even though I would love to. But I feel like this could be a whole podcast right here.
It really is. It really is, because you have such like the health as a man to drop so much weight. No wonder. I mean, you drop everything, like brain fog, your testosterone drops, like your muscle mass drops, all these things drop. But somewhere there's in the human condition, there's something in there, that pulse, that little beacon, right? That's soft and it gets louder and louder.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I often thought about what's happening in the world today. And I think, why do I see things so clearly? And why do other people not see things? I mean, I see it very clear, which is why I'm never sick, ever.
Yeah.
Because, and it's almost like I'm not in the matrix, that I'm actually living on the outside of it, screaming at everybody, wake up, you're in a pod. Wake up. This reality, which you think is real, is not. And when I was really young, I used to say, if you had to, as a modern human, if you had to choose between selling oranges on the side of the road or being a hyper intellectual, really knowledgeable person. Like, I have a friend, he's very intellectual, but he's very he also can build things with his hands. Which one, the person who sells the apples on the side of the road doesn't understand that, gas prices went up and food prices went up. But the other person does. So the person who's aware of how things are going to the crapper has, unfortunately, the ability to become emotionally distraught and affected by it. Whereas a person who has the blinders on, they don't see anything. They're living in their naive bliss. But are they? And this is what I would say when I was younger, because ultimately, for someone like myself that can see things, I can also fix things. I have the power, the human power inside of me. I cannot deal with other people. But I know the reason why I look young isn't because my skin is brown. It's because that little beacon, that ding, ding, that survival thing is stronger than it's ever been before. And that, all the biochemical chemistry starts to do innately what it's supposed to do in the very plastic world that I live in. Yeah. And that's what I think that, you might want to get out of the matrix. The matrix says, if you're in the matrix with all these elements, life sucks. But in reality, it doesn't suck, because you're able to have a podcast, talk to these PhDs that might have little nuggets of information that can bring to some awareness, or interview someone like myself, or have the ability to research something. When I've gone to Africa many times, and every time I love to talk to the Africans, because the impoverished ones think they can't get out of that. I'm like, of course you can. Of course you can. You're from America. I know I'm from America, and I've been in both places. You can get out of this situation that you're existing in. It's like I talked to one guy. He's like, you know what? I was most healthy when I grew up in a small farm outside of Johannesburg. And we were dirt poor, but we had a farm and we ate our own food. And I was so healthy then. Then I moved to the city and all I eat is garbage and I'm unhealthy. And it's so bad that restaurants and fast food seem like you have money. Because if you have money to eat this food, then you have higher status. But this is the food that's killing you. And I was more healthy when I was living on that farm, living off the earth. So it's how you look at the cup, if it's empty or full or whatever. Your cup is not empty.
Yeah.
You will fix
it. Well, I'd say that one thing that one great thing that's come through all this, and I always tell people this, that if I could take this all back, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be the person who I am. I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have at the moment, and I think that that's what's defined me, right? So, I would say that the thing is now that I can see what might be the evils in the world, and they still do get me down sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but I have ways to cope with them now. It's kind of like the art of war. If you see your enemy coming, you know how to deal with it, right? And you're talking about things like inflation and gas prices and food prices. See, a lot of people just think, oh, well, things will go back to normal soon, right? And I mean, we could talk about this stuff all day long. People might have different arguments towards it, but the way I see it is things aren't going back to normal anytime. In fact, in my opinion, only things will get worse, right? So when you come to understand these things, and when I see when I see people who live in the matrix and they're not waking up out of this pot of goo, is they don't want to hear this information coming from the other side. They don't want to even fathom. I'll give you an example. Okay. I personally have a friend who has cancer. Okay. And I told him about your story, and I sent him a link to my video on cancer I did with you and Dr. Seafried. Now, I'm not saying that that's a cure for cancer. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it, but at least listen to it. At least take into account that it could be something that might be helpful to you, right? At least listen to it. But no, he's so adamant. I have a really good medical team, my doctors. I want to listen to what they have to say. You know what I mean? He didn't even want to listen to it. Oh, okay. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, if he just listened to it and he said, not for me, I would have been like, okay, fair enough. But the fact that he won't even consider it, that's like living in the matrix.
It's cognitive dissonance. I mean, they people don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
Listening to you would suggest all these experts are, they're all wrong, and you've been drinking the wrong Kool-Aid.
Sorry, 1 second. My phone, I just realized, is about to die.
Oh no!
I didn't even look at it before.
You have to pick up your cars too, don't you?
Yeah, I do have to get going pretty soon.
Yeah.
Maybe we could edit this or not. Totally up to you.
No, I'm not going to edit this. This is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a great conversation, but we will have to probably continue it, or maybe edit and do another add-on to it.
Yeah. Do you want to do an outro and just say some last thoughts?
Sure.
And
yeah. If you guys are looking for a good coach, I've had tons of naturopaths, I've had tons of coaches. Stephanie's the only person I've ever worked with that's ever given me any advice. And not only given me good advice, but advice that actually is like life-changing. I have my own podcast, The Carnivore Lion. I've had a couple of podcasts with Stephanie on there. So that's been great. And really, that's it.
That's it. Go. Yeah. How do they find you? Is it just on YouTube, or is it Instagram? What else?
Just YouTube is fine. Yeah, The Carnivore Lion.
Yeah, he started interviewing people to try to figure out his own health. So there's going to be some great information in there. So I highly suggest everybody go to his channel and subscribe.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you. You can you go. I'm going to say some last words to the people.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, I'll talk to you on Telegram.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you for today. That was awesome.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So that was a discussion. As you can see, I'm not super professional, and I have this kind of idea of how I want my interviews to go. I want them to sit down and begin to explain, but it's kind of hard. It's like, where do you start? Where do you start? And I said, well, I'll jump in. I said to Scott, I'd jump in if I felt like I needed to redirect him so people could understand. His story is so like, I actually forgot my main notepad, but I've got like all of these notes here at the shop, writing down things we had another consultation follow-up, and he was talking about having methane, SIBO, and was taking this elemental diet, and stomach acids going down. He had food poisoning, all this kind of stuff. And the point is, I was like, you know what, it'd be really, really great if you just told your story to some of these people that are going through HELL with their health. And then, of course, health is always going to transform or translate into what's happening in today, what's happening in your mind. And I said before, when you change the way you think, you can change literally your health. That's all it takes. Like one thought can change. One negative thought, people, you don't feel it, can start lowering your stomach acid. You don't digest very well. It's very bizarre how one thought can bring down stomach acids. And or some people have the inverse, which is low stomach acid trying to squeeze it up and then hitting them here, having the acid reflux. I really want people to be inspired off of real stories. Now, for some, it might have been too long, or it might have felt like that it was directionless, but that's just how I do things. I want people to I want to have conversations, and I just don't want it to just sit on diet and nutrition, because that gets old really fast. Not for the new people who've come to my channel, but people have been following me for a while. And there's just, once I walk out these shop doors, there are so many things in life that I'm experiencing that I'd love to share. And I want other people with their stories to come in to place as well. And I'll leave you with this. People often ask me, where do I get my information from? And it's from people like Scott. Scott will tell me something, right? Like this prostate type, I forgot what it's called. Actually, I got to go and look it up again, where people think it's some kind of problem with their prostate, but it's actually having a histamine reaction within the pelvic girdle itself, like a fibromyalgia pain that you don't know why it's there. And then that'll make me go into the deep dive and learn more about this type of histamine response. So if I see it with other people, I'll recognize it right away. And if everything, because we ran out of time, but there's a strategy that that I came up with to deal with his severe reaction to all foods so he can eat. And I was like, have you done this? Have you eaten small meals throughout the day? Have you taken very small? If you've had an olive, if you react to olives, how many olives did you eat to test your histamine? And he said 3. And I said, no, I want you to go like this for a whole day with protein, just to prime your immune system to tag it and understand what that is without overwhelming the body, without the equipment of N-methyltransferase and diamine oxidase, which take down that histamine pain response or whatever response of having too much histamine within the body. So that's where I'll leave you at. There are more interviews to come. The next guy I'm going to interview is tomorrow, but I won't release it until a few days or a week from now. And we're going to talk about, because he actually works out, we're going to talk about how the ketogenic diet preserves your DNA, preserves the telomeres on the ends of your DNA, how it actually helps the mitochondria within the cell, the powerhouse, the energy source within each cell. And that's going to be a great, great, interesting conversation, because he's on my course page. He has been following me for a while. And it's great that I've got like generations now, not in human years, but I've got generations of people who've been following me who return and who've got more data to share with me. And this is how I learn. You want to know how I learn? It's not from some stupid research paper that was subjective, funded by who knows what that might have an agenda. It's just real people with real stories, and more is to come. You can find me at stephanieperson.com. There I offer consultations. I also offer a course. It's $15 a month, doesn't cost much at all. I'm actually getting it on my website. You pay for it through the site, but it's on a Facebook group, which that will end very soon, because I'm working with the new site with my web developer. And you can also find me right here below. You can suggest anything that you want me to talk about, or people you'd like me to interview. That I just don't want to interview famous people anymore, because I don't necessarily think they're always telling you the truth. I mean, Scott is not going to lie. Like, you can see that he's got problems. There's nothing to hide from. So he's the perfect person to have a real conversation with. Real people with real results, real problems, real everything. And you can find me on Instagram at Stephanie Ketogenic. My Facebook is Stephanie the Business Person, as in the body business. I'm 54 going on 55. I'm from originally from California, from Los Angeles. Don't judge Hollywood. Moved to Texas to get away from all of the fluckery. And now, because Texas is not my jam, I'm going to Tennessee. I'm in the closing process of my land, where I'm going to take 3 rescued equine horses that all have special needs. Thunder had cancer when I had him. He's got very sensitive skin, so he needs shelter. And he was very abused. I mean, this horse was unrideable, nervous. Now he's just like he's like the love of my life. We've got Luca as the mini Appaloosa, who has developed navicular, twisted legs, bones from being mishandled and miscared for. He's got one eye for the same reason. I saw him when I went to get Lulu, the donkey. Sorry for the noise, guys. I went to go get Lulu, who was a wild feral donkey, and it looks like she's pregnant, and she needs a pen. So I've created a donation. Excuse me. I'm not used to asking for people to donate on my website. For my equine, I need fencing, and I need shelter, and I need pens. So if you guys want to donate $1 or more, that would help out them exponentially. I'm good. I am so fortunate and so blessed with life that for them, all these animals that had a difficult life prior to me finding them and being like, okay, because when I went to go get the donkey, I saw the little horse. I was like, oh my God, he's going to die if I don't snag up. He was 7 months old. He was this tiny little thing. And now he's just so tough and strong and adorable and impregnated after his bullocks dropped the donkey. So we're going to have one more mini mule come out. Hopefully he'll be polka dotted, and I'm out. Thanks, guys, for today. Check out more at stephanieperson.com or right here. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification all bell. And I'm out because I'm at the auto shop and they're starting to work. Peace.